Be the Good with Kate shows each of us how it is possible to find and follow our passions at any age. But not only that, we can do this while making the world a better place along the way. I'm Kate Chericello, and I'm on a mission to shine a light on the positive news all around us. I hope Be the Good with Kate inspires you to live your purpose and go out and be the good in the world. Guests have included a Broadway music director, ex-convict, hospital clown, nonprofit leaders, people who've lost those closest to them, people who have found their calling in their 60s, and my kindergarten teacher. Join me each week as I have the honor of sharing these stories with you. You can find Be the Good with Kate on all podcast platforms and YouTube. Subscribe there or go to katechericello.com/bethegood to be updated when new episodes are released. Hey there, welcome to the rebroadcast of a few of Be the Good with Kate's more arts-focused episodes. My big life changes this past year, a move and a baby, have been wonderful, but also have me craving the arts world I had always been so submerged in. So I wanted to share these episodes with you in case any of you are also craving an extra dose of arts inspo as well. If you missed these episodes the first time, I'm so glad you are here now. If you're a returner, if you're like me, you love re-listening because you are reminded of the amazing details you swore you wouldn't forget, but somehow got pushed back in that busy brain. 2 episodes are here. The first from 2024, the second from 2022. First, you'll hear from Mickela, the 4-time Emmy Award-winning TV host, who completely embodies the main idea of Be the Good with Kate, seeking out that which lights you up, your passion, and along the way, making the world a better place. Mickela likes to say she makes new friends by dancing with strangers, using the universal language of dance and music to connect with the world. Then you'll hear from Shelley, a 75-year-old widow who was told she had 3 to 5 years to live in the 90s. Shelley is still here today, and she became a comedian at the age of 69 and shows us how saying yes and throughout life will keep you facing your fears, growing, and living your best life. She will have you smiling and laughing before this episode is done.
I could not be more excited to introduce you to today's guest on Be the Good with Kate, Mickela, who is the host and executive producer of Bare Feet with Mickela. And she tries to bring joy into the world with her travel series on PBS. And here's a little bit more about her. She's a 4-time Emmy Award-winning host, executive producer, and creator of Bare Feet with Mickela, a PBS travel series following her adventures as she experiences the world one dance at a time. She's been featured in like every major publication, but the one that I want to tell you about is that she has performed on Sesame Street, which I think that is really awesome. Season 6 is out now on your local PBS station. It's also you're able to stream the show on the PBS app, pbs.org, and on the Go Traveler app. Mickela, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kate.
Thanks. So I gave you a little bit of a bio, but please tell everybody more about who you are.
Yeah, well, I love that you highlighted that I danced on Sesame Street because that was like the best day of my life. You know, as growing up watching Sesame Street and it being like my school, I was freaking out the whole time we were filming. But yeah, like you said, I travel and dance around the world. I like to say I make new friends by dancing with strangers. So in every place I go, I learn the dance and music from the people and the locals, whether that's in my own backyard here in New York City, or it's across the globe and I'm learning tango in Buenos Aires or becoming a K-pop star for a day in South Korea. But I truly believe I have the best job in the world. I absolutely love what I do. And I feel honored that it brings joy to our viewers and the people that get to see our series. So that's me, in a little nutshell.
And Mickela, how did you end up with your own travel show? What was the path to get here?
Yeah, it's kind of insane. This year marks the 14th year that since I had the idea for Bare Feet. So I worked in the music industry. I've had many past lives, like a lot of us, I guess. But I worked in the music industry, quit. I loved the job, but was missing dance in my life. I grew up dancing. I was a musician. And then found dance again, became a professional dancer here in New York City, a dance teacher. And when I would travel for fun, because I was able to study abroad for a summer between my sophomore and junior year of college, and caught the travel bug. But when I would travel internationally and I couldn't speak the local language, I would use dance to connect with folks. And it wasn't like I was just randomly dancing with people in the streets. It was festivals or holidays or some sort of celebrations. And it was, I pick up dances very quickly, but that wasn't the magical part, yes, it was amazing dancing with all these folks and having these immediate connections. But then after, they'd like invite me into their home for a family meal, or I was invited to a wedding the next day in Mumbai, India, you know, we're salsa dancing the night before. So I found that dance was this way to connect with people beyond just in that moment. And so that's where the idea for Bare Feet came from. And when I literally woke myself up in the middle of the night having this vision of what Bare Feet is today. And I was like, I'm going to make a TV show where I travel and dance around the world. And it was for completely selfish reasons. I was like, I want to learn as many dances as I can. And over the years, it evolved into this really powerful means of connection, not just with the people that I meet in my show, but also with our audiences. And it's grown into something much bigger than I ever imagined it would be, and much more powerful. And I feel a heavy responsibility of telling stories, or having people tell their own stories of their culture, which a lot of especially in our past 2 seasons, of cultures that aren't always represented in the media. So I'm really proud of that. But we're in season 6 now. It's a miracle that the show even exists. And I tried the traditional route, because when I started this, Travel Channel was still airing travel shows. They're not airing travel shows anymore. They're airing ghost hunters or whatever it may be. But I kept getting rejected, rightfully so. I'd never been on camera. But they kept saying to me, you don't look like a typical travel host for us. Good luck. It's an interesting idea. No one's ever done this. So, but you're not going to be the host of your own show. And then when I won my second Emmy for Best Host, I dedicated it to all the producers and executives that told me I couldn't do it. And I kind of got from the audience, like, that was the best FU speech I've ever heard. But it was all in truth of like, look, that was the driving factor in like, in my determination. And like, I believe in this project. And I believe I'm the right person to tell these stories, because I genuinely care. And I have so much fun doing it. So yeah, it's been a 14-year amazing journey, and we're in pre-production now for season 7. So we're going back to international destinations, and it's been a joy. I mean, it's been really, you know, as any entrepreneur and small business owner, like it's not just roses and wonderful things every day. It's difficult, but it's worth every tear and blood, sweat, and grind, you know, the grind and everything. But yeah, it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
Well, and talking about it being worth it, like the passion and the joy in the episodes is through the roof. I was thinking to myself yesterday, as I watched just like the whole reel that you had put together, as well as you know, just having seen the episodes over time. But when you saw it all together, one after another in the reel, it's just like smiles and laughter and smiles and laughter. And it's none of it is put on for the performance factor, right? Like we're both performers, we can do that stuff. But this was that really true just joy, and you just couldn't watch it and not be smiling too.
Thank you. I think you're talking about so during COVID, right, when we were all like stuck at home, I honestly thought Bare Feet was done. I was like, we're never going to be able to travel again. My travel show in particular, I have to touch people. Right. We weren't allowed to be within 10 feet of people, right? Like we had to keep our distance and not touch people. And I was like, oh my gosh, Bare Feet's done. Like, this is it. And I started putting together editing that video. It was basically the past 10 years at that time. And I was crying as I was editing it, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was able to have all these experiences. And if Bare Feet can't go on, I'm happy because I was able to do all this. Right. And so it was like a really, really wonderful retrospect of my work. Cause sometimes when you're in it, you don't get to look back and be like, oh, look how far we've come. You know, it's sort of like you're just in the grind of it. And so, yeah, I'm not an actress. I'm a performer, but I'm not an actress. So what you see in the show is really me, you know, and even this is why I created the show, because even when there weren't cameras following me, I was doing this, and I still do this when I travel for fun. And I rarely get to go on vacation, but I was just in Dublin for a travel conference, and I tacked on a few days because I have a lot of friends that live out there, and I love Ireland. And I did the same thing. I was out dancing, and, you know, it's just like, that's just who I am as a person. And that's why naturally this show evolved into what it is, because I was doing that anyway. There were no cameras. This is what I did when I traveled for fun, and I still do. And I think people, when I meet them, because dance and music is so important to them, the people that I find, they recognize that I really care and I really enjoy myself. And I think they feed off of that energy, and they just want to keep giving me more and more dance steps, more history, more story of their legacy, right? That's like the biggest part of this. And then the audience feels that too. I've had so many emotional interactions with our fans, and we're all in tears when we see each other. It's amazing. It's really amazing. And people feel like they know me. And I'm not putting on this character. I'm not playing another person. I'm Mickela. Like, what you see is me, and I'm crying or laughing or falling over. And I think a lot of, because I wasn't trained as a professional journalist or host, I'm breaking all these rules that I didn't know existed. And it's sort of this very vulnerable, realistic way of traveling versus this is this. And, I think that's kind of my superpower. I think that's where I break that fourth wall a lot, and people really, really connect with that. So
well, that is something that totally draws me to the show too, is just how relaxed you are. Like, it never does feel like you are trying to do X, Y, or Z for the show.
No, sorry, my microphone just
no, that's okay. Fell over. Again, we're talking about being real. So
we're real.
You have to have a microphone.
I'm in I should send a picture. I have my ring light. I've got my camera. We got everything. Yeah. It's never put on. It's never put on. And I'm so close with my crew. I think that's also another part of the magic of the show is we're a very small crew. It's a very small footprint. They're documentary filmmakers that I work with. So they're all about not setting up a scene. Yes, they want to make sure there's good, we use a lot of natural light. We don't use external lighting or anything, but they really, once we set up where we're going to be filming, they just let us, me and the people that I'm dancing with, go, and they capture the moments. There's no all right, stop, let's say that again, because that's not how real life happens. You're not being fed lines. So they're really beautiful at capturing not only the beautiful parts of the dancing, but these moments where we find that connection. And we've all worked together for so many years. We all know when there's that magic happening live, and it's just they get a little closer and everyone feels like there's this very intimate moment, especially when I start getting emotional and I feel comfortable enough with my crew that now I just cry all the time. So that's when they really get it. They're like, Mickela's crying. I remember my director was like, "You're crying too." In our Morocco episode, she's like, "You're crying too much in this episode." I was very emotional in that episode, and I was like, "I can't help it. I'm sorry." She's like, "This is the third time already." So,
well, then I wanted to ask you more about assembling the crew and just getting this off the ground to begin with, because I know a lot of our listeners and a lot of the trends that come up in the show, that idea of I'm not following my passion yet. Okay, now I think I've discovered what that is, but how do I get from where I am to where I see myself being? So how did you go from, I know that you had a blog first. How did you go from that to actually having a show?
Yeah. So we filmed the pilot first. I saved up I spent all my life savings, hired my friends. I decided after pitching and pitching and pitching, and everyone kept saying no to me, I was like, I know deep down this is a really good idea. I'm going to hire my friends. We're going to go to my family's hometown in southern Italy because I know the language well enough. I'm related to half the town. I know the dance group personally. And there's this big wheat harvest festival, and we can stay in my grandmother's little farmhouse, and so we don't have to pay for hotels. And she was cooking for us every day. So it was a very personal journey for me. I was like, I want to start with my own family's culture first. Both my parents are immigrants, and then go from there throughout the world. And so I started that and it was funny. I'm a very good producer in that all the logistics were all in place. I was booking everything and making sure we were filming with this group and doing these things. And then when it came time to be in front of the camera, I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot. I had to think about what am I supposed to say? And how am I supposed to be in front of the camera? It was the last thing on my mind. But what was really beautiful is our director of photography at the time, she's a dear friend now, but I had just met her. She was a friend of a friend who was on the crew as well. And she goes, you're just talking to me. You're just talking to me, Bridget. Like, cause I saw the lens and it just felt like this black abyss, right? I'm like, I'm talking to nobody, or I don't know what's going on. And so after that, when I would film myself, because I started the blog and then YouTube videos by myself, I kept imagining I'm talking to Bridget. I'm not talking to an inanimate object. And I think that's where that personal connection of like, I'm talking to a friend on the other side of this conversation or ridiculous video that I'm making. And out of necessity, I would ask random people to hold my camera for me. Now it's very common, but you have to think this was 14, 13, 12 years ago when I was starting to do this. And like, nobody was just talking to themselves on camera. YouTube was just starting. Instagram didn't exist yet. So it was a really different social media and content distribution landscape. There was no such thing as an influencer yet, technically, right? I had come back from that trip. We edited a sizzle reel, pitched it to a third-party production company because I wanted it to be on Travel Channel at the time. Quickly, this story, I tell this story a lot because I got signed to this third-party production company for a year of a shopping agreement. Mistake number one, I thought, learning now, you only sign a 30 to 90 day shopping agreement deal. This was 365-day shopping agreement. That means they had exclusivity to shop it around. And they said, we have a wonderful relationship with Travel Channel. It's going to be amazing. By the way, their company was called No Regrets Entertainment. So I probably should have known by the name that not the best. I mean, I don't even know if they exist anymore. But 2 weeks after signing with them, we find out Travel Channel signed in an identical show called Dance Around the World. So I go back to the team and I was like, hey, now what are we going to do? Let's pitch it to someone else because Travel Channel is going to have already the same idea of a show. And they're like, nope, we just can't shop it to anyone. And I was like, well, can I have my footage back? I'd handed over my hard drives. And they're like, sure, you can either pay us $30,000 or you can wait out your year's agreement. I obviously didn't have $30,000. They didn't pay me a dime for my footage, nothing. So there were two blows. It was like the station the channel that I wanted to be on signed an identical show. And then all this money and hard work and my own idea, I couldn't touch for a year. So when I think back on I was 28 years old at the time, which is insane to me. And I did not give up. I was like, okay, I'm going to wait it out a year. I cried it out, obviously. And then started blogging, and I lived in New York City. So every night I would go see dance and music from all different parts of the world. I'd take dance classes, I'd go to events, and I started writing about it. So I started to build my skill in storytelling. And because I kept saying to myself, the goal wasn't just to be, not to be on TV, it's to share these stories of connection through dance and music. So let's pivot, right? Pivot has always been part of my mantra from the very beginning. So I waited out the year and then got my footage back and then started hiring an editor. We put out little YouTube videos. And over the years, I had found that public television was a way to be an independent producer and distribute your own content because I kept pitching to executives and I kept hearing the same story. Even though I had a sizzle reel and I had these videos I was posting, they're like, it's too new of a concept. We don't want to take a chance on you, right? That's why you see a million Storage Wars shows or cooking competition shows because they know the proof of concept works. By the way, that show on Travel Channel aired once and was canceled, literally. So, and then we all know what happened with Travel Channel. First, it became all male demographic viewing, and then it just completely isn't even travel content at all. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise. And over the years of these being sort of pushed down and figuring it out, is I've learned how to make a really good TV show. I've learned how to be a really great host. I've learned how to communicate better. I've learned how to produce better. So I wouldn't trade for anything in the world to have been signed right away at the beginning because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready at all to be at a level of where I am now. I know the ins and outs of every single part of my business, of every single part of the show. Every single group that you see on my show, I pick up the phone and I'm talking to them. These are who I want on my series. This is how I want the story to go. Like it is, I eat, breathe, sleep, dream, everything bare feet. Like this is my life. Now, to go back to how this came out on public television, I do a lot of speaking engagements for people who are pursuing their passion project or entrepreneurship. I always say, don't just quit your job and then like pursue this dream. I was a full-time dance teacher for the first 7 years that I was doing Bare Feet. I could not make a living off of making this, what was a series, blog, then eventually even the television show. It was this piecemealing together of all the monies I was making. Any extra money would go into Bare Feet, eventually finding sponsorship. So don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. Unless you're independently wealthy and you can, don't ever just give up your means of income because you're like, I'm going to chase this dream and I got to quit everything. The time that I decided it's time to pursue 100% of my energy into Bare Feet was when I was spending about the same amount of time. And I thought, well, if of like my day job or whatever, as a dance teacher and performer, it's all job. And this project was, if I invest 100% of my time in this, the return on investment will be as much money as I'm making now or more. And that took about 7 to 8 years. And there were years where, as a freelancer, you're an entrepreneur, like some years are better, some years are worse. And you just have to really kind of prepare for that. You really have to prepare for that. And as a small business owner, you're always the last person to get paid on your team, right? Because you have to pay everybody else, which is great. I'm so proud that I'm able to pay people. I think that I'm the most proud of anything that like I get to send out 1099s to people in this world. And I'm like, I help them pay their mortgage and I help them pay, that to me is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I also, during COVID, because I have a lot of independent producers like myself through public television or people who have these ideas, I have so many people that reach out and say, I want to be on PBS or I want my own TV show. Can you help me? How did you do it? And I would always want to help people. And then I eventually was like, I don't have time to help all these folks. During COVID, I started this website called the the Independent Producers Association of Public Media. So it's basically a how-to as independent producers, whether you have a series or a documentary film that you want to distribute on public television. So if you go to IPA, like the beer, IPApublicmedia.com, it's how do you distribute? How do you fundraise? How do you produce for public television specifically? Because PBS and public television needs more diverse voices. They need more younger voices. And I thought, why not create this free asset? It's a one-stop shop on the internet of how-tos. And I get emails from producers saying, you don't know me to this day. You don't know me, but I've used every single step of what you've put on this website. And now our series is on PBS. And so it's amazing. So for all your listeners, go to ipapublicmedia.com. If you are even interested or trying to figure out like, is public media or is PBS the best place for me? It's a completely different beast from any sort of other distribution, but it's a beautiful audience of people who are interested in really poignant and educational, informational, and entertaining programming. And I love being part of the PBS and public media system. It's very challenging, but it's amazing. And so that's where I found an outlet for me to be able to be an independent producer and still get my show out. I also had a non-traditional route because I started locally here in New York, starting airing on the local station. They would air me at like 3 a.m. It was like but
it was being aired.
Yeah. I mean, in the #1 market in the United States, we're New York City, so just to be like, my show's on TV, this is crazy. And it's grown now to like their top show. We're on primetime. My show's on like 5 times a week here. So don't disregard those little baby steps because they add up. They really, really add up. And it's tough. There were so many moments where I just wanted to throw the shoe in because I was like, this isn't sustainable financially or emotionally and then I would say that. And then like, I'd get this email from a fan be like, you have no idea how you've gotten me through this. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, we're doing something right. I'll figure this out.
Yes.
And it's really been like that. That's really the journey it's been.
I ask each guest about any advice they give people for when they want to bring their passions to the light, and you just answered that tenfold and gave so much incredible information. And I think that last little detail that you just thrown in about hearing from a fan is also a huge, it seemed like a tiny detail you said it, but it's a huge thing of just reminding us all that the power of telling someone you appreciate them, even if it's a stranger that is on TV, or if it's, your next door neighbor, that it means so much just to hear from someone. So even that was a great piece of advice. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Oh, okay. Of course. I mean, it's really funny. The universe knows, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but the universe knows when you need a little boost. Like every single time I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to get a normal job. And then it's like, nope, someone like throws a shoe at my head and is like, you got to listen to the, here's someone who just thinks this is amazing, and don't give up. Just don't give up.
100%.
Yeah. And also for people, like, again, the idea of looking back of where you started, if you see progress, that's where, and even if it's like over little minor progressions, if you add it up and see, oh my gosh, look how far we've come from a year ago, 5 years ago, 3 months ago, like take a breath and look back. If there isn't progress, that's where you have to reevaluate and say, okay, are we on the right path? Am I on the right path? Is this what I still want to do? Like I said, I've pivoted so many times, but the mission of Bare Feet has never changed. I've always, the mission of connecting with the world through the universal language of dance and music. That's always been the baseline of Bare Feet. How we do it, where it's distributed, the means of telling stories. And it's evolved into so many things like live events, Bare Feet tours that we're doing. It's just like, it's still the mission. The mission has never changed for me. And I'm grateful that it's really connected with people. That message has connected with so many people.
And what's the most surprising aspect of where you are right now?
That I'm still doing this, to be honest. Like, I love it. I love it. And that I'm still doing this. Like Bare Feet, like I said, it was a completely selfish idea of like, I want to just try as many dances and wear as many beautiful costumes and go to the most amazing places around the world. And then over the years, it's just evolved into this more powerful message. And so now I'm an adjunct professor at NYU teaching a course based on my show. It's called Intercultural Communication Through Dance, which has been a dream of mine since I started Bare Feet. I was like, am I going to pursue this crazy TV show idea, or should I get a master's and a PhD in dance anthropology? And turns out I could do both, like pursue this show and then really touch young people and create this course through my alma mater. And it's been incredible. It's our first semester and the kids are just, it's transformational, Awesome. The fact that we get to do these live events in downtown Brooklyn every summer, where I bring the TV show to life and I have fans that get to experience what Bare Feet's all about connecting with local cultures through dance and music. The fact that we have the Bare Feet tours where people can come with me to these places and meet all my friends that they see in the show. We have one coming up later this fall in Ireland, and we've run that tour a few times, and people are like, I feel like we're meeting your friends. I'm like, of course you're meeting my friends. I curate the tours. Everything is based on what I want to do and who I love in these places. And so it's been amazing. The New York City public school system during COVID, and still to this day, have been using Bare Feet episodes for part of their virtual learning. And we're creating an official curriculum for the students K through 12 here in New York City, which will then open up to as free resources for the rest of the United States. I mean, I'd never thought all of this would come from this crazy idea that everyone kept saying, it's not going to work. You're absolutely nuts, including people that love me very much. And that, there were so many, and still to this day, there's so many naysayers. Well, not nearly as many, but there's so many roadblocks that you're going to hit. And the fact that it's still around is a miracle. It's a real miracle. And I look back on that Mickela of like the first 10 years of this project, even, about the first 10 years, I'm like, who was this person? She's absolutely nuts. Like, how did she not give up at the beginning? Like, I really feel this out of body experience, which is really strange. It doesn't feel like it was me. It feels like this other person who like just kept fighting. And I'm like, damn, she did it. Thank you. And now I'm like, now I'm kind of coasting, it's really a really weird feeling.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're coasting. Not at all.
No, but compared to before, it was like, I don't know. I had to learn how to do everything.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to do everything. And there was no show to really base my show on at that point.
Yeah.
No one doing what I was doing that was out there publicly. And so even when we were filming the pilot and still earlier episodes of saying to people, look, the premise is I need to try the dances. They kept saying, oh, we'll perform for you and it'll be a nice presentation. I'm like, no, I need to dress up in costume with you. I need to try it. So there were so many moments of lost in translation where with my crew, we think like, oh my God, we're not going to we flew all the way to the other side of the world and they're not going to let me dance with them. And I somehow get to convince them and it works in the end, but it's so stressful. And it's happened so many times where it's like, oh my God, this almost didn't happen. So many times.
Like just the language barriers alone. I mean, do you always find someone who speaks English in certain countries or do you just, because dance is a universal language, you just figure it out along the way? How does that work?
No. So now, and for a while, we've been working with the local governments and the local destinations, with their destination marketing organizations. We wouldn't be able to do this without their support. And so we're very grateful. The show has evolved tremendously on that side as well. So most of the time we have a fixer or a minder or like a translator with us. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do anything. And it's not like we just show up and kind of shoot. It's pre-planned, there's pre-production. Of course, things change if we come up with something and we go to that location and this has happened quite a few times. Once in particular in Uzbekistan, we were going to film this dance performance, or we thought it was a dance performance. It turned out it was just a fashion show, which was beautiful, but not professional dancers. And my crew's filming and I was like, cut these cameras, save your energy. We are not using this. And so with our minder, I was like, look, because I'd been to Uzbekistan before, luckily. And I was like, I know that there are dance academies everywhere in Uzbekistan. They really promote the arts. And I said, we need to find a dance academy and I need to dance with students. And we did. And it turned out to be our opening segment for the episode. It's gorgeous, gorgeous. And I'm just like, I have a huge smile on my face because the whole time I'm like, this is amazing. This is exactly what we were looking for. But we're such a small crew. We don't have an executive back in New York or LA telling us what to do, where we would have had to wait and kind of maneuver, and budgets would have been flying if we had to change the shoot. And so it's very malleable. We're very light on our feet. But yeah, that happens all the time for us. And I'm a producer. I'm not just the host where I just show up and read my lines. So I'm like, we need to change this, and I can make those executive decisions. And my crew trusts me in it, and the people I work with, and it's all very respectful. I'm not saying like in a negative way. It's like, okay, this isn't going to work. Let's find a solution now, right? Because we only have 2 more days in this country and we have 5 segments to fill. So my producer brain's always working. It's not just the on-camera brain.
Yeah. Well, like you said before, the on-camera part was kind of the last thing in your mind when you first started, right? You were thinking about all the logistics.
Yeah. And now the on-camera part's, it's so fun and easy for me. And I really enjoy it because I'm just having the best time of my life. It's like, I get to dance and play musical instruments and wear these beautiful costumes and eat all this food. And it's just like, I get to do all this really, really fun stuff and see the world in a beautiful way,
And something that came up when I was watching too, how many days do you spend in each place, or does it vary? Because I've seen some where you do a complete performance, like even the one in New York at Iguana with the honey taps. Yeah. Yes. I love like the Charleston and all that. So I was definitely drawn to that episode. And like you did a whole like in costume, wigs, just the whole like the banter beforehand. I mean, how many days do you work with all of the people?
That was an hour, 2 hours. Like no joke. I had rehearsed earlier that day.
Yeah.
You saw me tap dancing in the dance studio. And then that night we show up. I'm interviewing Vince Giordano when he's getting ready for his big band. And then I'm backstage in this little, it's New York. So it's like a little closet and they're putting on my blonde wig and makeup. And at that time I had one crew member. She's amazing. She's now my director, but we shot that whole season, me and her bopping around, New York City on subways. Oh yeah, girl.
Wow.
If you saw in that same episode when I'm dancing in Chicago, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We had 10 minutes because it was between when they they were about to clean the stage and open the doors for the audience to come in. I had exactly 10 minutes. And Lina Plioplite, who was my director at the time, she was my camera girl. You see it's wide shot on the stage. She's running around this theater getting every single shot because we only have 10 minutes. That's all I had. That's it. That's why I'm learning some of the choreography in the like lobby of the theater because we had to wait because it's all unionized, right? Like you can't be anywhere without. So David Bushman was like teaching me some of the choreo in the hallway so that I could use those 10 minutes on stage actually dancing versus learning all the pieces. But I kept learning it so quickly, they just kept adding on. But fans ask me this all the time, like, do you rehearse? Never. The best part of the show is when I'm screwing up. That's the best part. Is like
audiences always love that. Yeah.
They love it. No, but it's like I'm the most vulnerable. The people that I'm interacting with, we're laughing. That's where you have real moments. It's not the perfect performance. Because the moments where I get it, I'm like, I'm so proud of myself. They're so proud of me. It's so fun. Or it gets emotional because it's like this transformational moment. If we didn't film that and I'm rehearsing it, then what do we show? Just a performance? That's boring. I mean, as a professional, seeing other professionals, it's way more exciting. I'm not at the professional level, so I'm never going to get that good. So why not show all these beautiful moments? And I pick up very quickly. It's really funny. Lina, again, the director, every time we go into a space and they're like, Mickela, you're never going to be able to pick up these dances. So we'll just show you. And she's like, no, just try it. Just try it. She'll get it. Don't worry. She'll get it. And it always works out. I mean, I'm always like, is this the one I'm not going to get? But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And just a great reminder too, for audiences that when you watch a show, you just really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Like you might have 10 days, you might have 10 minutes and making it work.
And when we film internationally, we generally film 5 days of filming, bookended with 2 travel days. That's it. And it sometimes 4 days, sometimes 5 days, but I'm never rehearsing off camera before I'm dancing with these folks. So a lot of times it's the first time I'm meeting them in person. That's the best part, where it's like, oh my God, we've been talking for so long. And it's like, it's a genuine hug. It's a genuine hello. And even with my crew, we try and set up the cameras before that person enters the space or I enter the space, because we don't want to do like a hi, nice to meet you. It's always like, we're finally meeting after all this time. And then if it doesn't quite work, we don't set it up. We just keep going and I'll do a voiceover or something later, because it never looks as good as the genuine hello hug. I'm so excited to see you. Yeah.
Okay, I can ask you a million more questions because I just love everything about this. You're tying all of my worlds together too, of dance and travel and television and all of it. But
you're running out of time. I'm sorry.
No, it's more that you sound like you're one of the busiest people I've ever spoken to, especially with all of the extras. You know, you're talking about every summer with Brooklyn and the live events. The list goes on. But I want to know, what do you feel is the reason that we need to share these stories? Usually when I ask this question, it's about like, why are we just sharing positive news in general? But for you too, of why to share the people that you're interacting with on the television show, like why share their stories and their dances?
Yeah, well, a few things. I think for us, especially as Americans and in the media, dance is this very separated thing from every day, right? Either you're a dancer or you're not. Either you grew up in the dance studio or you didn't. Either you're a ballet professional or you're on Dancing with the Stars, or so you think you can dance and it's like super, super, super professional, which is wonderful, or you're not. And I think this show, a majority of our viewers don't consider themselves dancers, and they've fallen in love with how dance is so accessible. Right. And I that's what we're trying to do, is make dance accessible for every body type, every ability, every culture. And then on top of that, the purpose of the show is to show the similarities versus our differences, right? It's the universals. Everyone needs food, shelter, love, family. And I say a little bit of dance and music to get through the day. Like you really need, as being human and part of community, is the arts, dance, music, that connectivity. So what I've also seen from our fans is when they see these cultures that they've either never heard of or have felt that they are an other, through our show, we're showing them like they're just like you. If they don't even look like you, or they don't practice the same religion as you, or don't speak the same language as you, or don't eat the same food as you, so everyone has these universals, and dance and music kind of brings you down to this very human level. And so that's the overall arching goal of Bare Feet, is to show like we're all the same. We all need the same things. And whether those dances may look slightly different, but sometimes they look kind of similar to what we know. And it's right. We're really not that different. We're all very, very, very similar. And like I said, these newer seasons, the past seasons 5 and 6, even season 4, 5, 6, and then our newest season 7, we're really focusing on giving a platform to voices that aren't always heard. LGBTQ community, the BIPOC voices, Indigenous voices, Black community, the disability community, people. And I'm not telling their stories. I have this show and they're sharing with us. It's in their own voice. They are telling their own stories. And as a producer, as a storyteller, as a TV host, I'm evolving. The show, if you see earlier episodes, which I love, it's more about me and how much fun I'm having and my experience in trying these dances. But as the show evolved, I realized it's not about me. It's about the people that we're featuring, and let's give them the platform as much as possible to share their own stories, because they're not given the platform that they deserve all the time. So just trying to do our part, it's really about that.
Fantastic. I cannot thank you enough for sharing this with us today. It just lights me up. I don't think I've had such a smile on my face in an interview in a while. Thank you. And I know just from my own experience with dance, seeing people from all backgrounds, and I love like swing dancing is such an example that I know, where you just show up and no one has anything planned, and you meet strangers, like you say, and they become your friends through dance. And people, like the amount of people who work in like science and tech fields who are out there at night dancing, and it's just the merging of backgrounds. And like you said, we need the arts to connect us. I'm so glad you said that. And please tell everybody where they can find you and follow you for more. And of course, we can watch the show on PBS.
Yeah, if you check us out at travelbarefeet.com or on any of the social media channels at Travel Bare Feet, you can find us. And we've got so many amazing things coming up for the rest of the year, but check us out at travelbarefeet.com.
Wonderful. And tour in Ireland this fall.
You can dance with me. Small group tours. Yeah, it's really small group tours. And again, I make new friends by dancing with strangers. I'm not the person that's like, I've been to this many countries and just ticking off the list. Like, I love to go back to places because I feel connections to the people there that I've made friends. So I just love going back to see friends and dance with friends and have these connections with people. And that's okay too. I think people get stuck in their head of travel means you have to tick off all the boxes. And it's like, no, if you really feel a connection to a place, go back and explore even more and call that person or text or on Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever, reach out to the person that you met. And it's amazing to feel a connection to another place. It's really wonderful.
Oh, I love it so much. Mickela, thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Shelley Smartley is today's guest, and she found a way to bring smiles to other people's faces by first seeking a way to bring joy to herself. After the death of her husband, Shelley started to seek out comedy, and she first became a professional audience member, which I loved that term on their website, and then became a comedian herself. She is now the showrunner and creator of The Smartleys. It is an award-winning TV, radio, and podcast series. And she's here with me today. Shelley, thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Kate, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you, because I know you were going to fill out this introduction even more. Please tell us who you are and what you do in your own words.
Okay, well, you already covered the part of the Smartleys, but I'm also a 73-year-old widow. And I became a stand-up comedian when I was 69 years old. So, but from my past, you wouldn't have ever dreamed that I would have become a comedy TV show creator. I'm the past founder and president of the International Scleroderma Network, which was a nonprofit dedicated to helping people around the world with a very serious disease. And I'm the co-editor of 3 books called the Voices of Scleroderma book series. So, but that began, and I think that this is important for a lot of people to understand, that they think that they might need to have the perfect life in order to become a success or in order to pursue their dreams. And for me, the journey towards my today actually began when I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And that was in the mid-90s. And the doctor told me that I had 3 to 5 years left to live and that there was no treatment and no cure. So that kind of astounded me. A lot of people, they would kind of wrap up their life at that point. So that's exactly what I did. I planned my funeral. I set my affairs in order. And then I set about thinking, how can I make a difference? You know, what can I do with the limited time that I do have left? What's the best thing that I can do with my time? And although I was completely disabled and suffering severe cognitive problems and severe fatigue at the time, I decided that it was difficult, very, very difficult then to find any quality information on scleroderma in the world. I even went to the library and they didn't even have any books on scleroderma. So there was nothing that I could turn to. Finally, I found a support group. And when I showed up the first day at the support group, I said, you know, you guys should have a website, because it was really, really hard to find this support group. And they said, that's a great idea. Why don't you do it?
Of course.
And I was thinking, I can't do it. I'm suffering cognitive difficulties and I'm so tired. But nobody else was doing it. So I felt that it was important. And so it took me 6 months to learn how to make my first hyperlink. But I didn't give up on it, even though it was very difficult. This was before the internet was hardly even born, you know. And then I created a website. At first, it was called Scleroderma from A to Z. And in one page, I covered everything in the world that somebody should know about scleroderma. Eventually, it became, I formed a nonprofit agency around the website. It grew to over 2,000 pages in 23 languages. We had patients and doctors from all around the world who pitched in and volunteered and gave their time to make it a quality website with quality medical information, with support that people could rely on all around the world. And as you can see, I lived through that time, and through some of the things that I learned doing my outreach, I think it helped me prolong my life, and certainly gave me a sense of mission that helped get me out of bed every day, which is very hard when you're suffering from a terminal illness.
Wow. That idea of not giving up, and even whether you think you have 3 years to live or you think, I don't know how many years I have left to live, and look at the outcome, and you have been fighting it and you have helped so many other people along the way. And that was, you know, I don't even want to say was, because I'm sure, you know, all of this information is still out there, still helping people. And this is just one aspect of all the things you have and are doing to help people.
Yeah, and along the way, my late husband also had very serious illness. He was on oxygen for 10 years before he had a lung transplant. And after he had his lung transplant, we moved to California, which was absolutely wonderful. We're from Minnesota. And so we were like two kids in a candy shop, being able to enjoy beautiful weather all year round. And we truly enjoyed that. But at the same time, you realize that we're far away from our family and our friends that we'd known our whole life. And 2 years later, he passed away from leukemia. So my life had been very serious for several decades, with kind of nonstop serious things to deal with. And what I felt when he passed away was, I knew I could survive it, but only if I could laugh again. I had to be able to laugh. And so I did a very unusual thing for grieving widows, I'm sure. And that's the 2 weeks after he passed away, I went to my first stand-up comedy show. And I was able to laugh again. And I absolutely loved it. And I needed the endorphins. I needed the social community. I needed people. And that was a resource for me. So I started going to comedy shows every night of the week. And I continued that. I dubbed myself a professional audience member. And San Diego has a brilliant stand-up community with great performers from all around the world. We draw a lot of performers from LA. So I was really exposed to some of the finest comedy in the world. And several years after that, I got properly diagnosed for the illnesses that I have. I have multiple autoimmune syndrome. And one of them is, several of them are extremely serious, but I was able to get treatment finally after so many years, of having been told that I had a dread disease and there was no treatment and no cure. But finally, I was eligible for a treatment. However, it required 35 hours a week of infusions. And so for 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, I had a nurse trailing me along with my little port while I was getting my infusions. And to recover from that, every night I would go to a comedy show because I really needed the uplift. And then finally I decided that I should start using my infusion time to write things that were funny. And so I began doing that. And finally I felt good enough that I enrolled in a stand-up comedy course. And I became a stand-up comedian myself. And within just a few months, I was performing in real shows, the kind that people paid money for.
This is just blowing my mind. And I keep going back to, the improv principle of yes and, right? So any audience member who doesn't know that, it's one of the basics of comedy is if you're doing a scene or you're thinking of something, never say no, just always say yes, because yes opens the door to the next step, right? To summarize it quickly. And I feel like that has been your whole life that you've explained just now, is that you could have said no so many times, but you kept saying, okay, yes, this is what's happening, and what can I do next to bring something better? That is just remarkable. And even just from the standpoint of, you didn't say, let me get some comedy in by sitting on my couch and watching a funny show. You said, I'm getting out the door. What was that like? Because I know, when you're down, often the last thing you want to do is do anything, right? But you got yourself out that door. What was that like?
I knew that I had to. I'm naturally very much of an introvert. Okay. And I found in my past life that when I had difficult times in my life, I tended to really become introverted. I could become seriously depressed. And I knew that the only way out of that was to reach out and be with people every day. And that's a very, very hard thing for an introverted person to do. You have to force yourself, but I did force myself, and I am so glad I did. Through that, about 9 months after I became a stand-up comedian and was, in my first real show, I made arrangements to temporarily retire from the nonprofit agency. It was really weighing on me, and I felt that it was time for me to make a change in my life. I was very reluctant to do it, but I finally arranged for somebody to come in and run the nonprofit agency for 6 months, and to figure out whether we needed to close it if I was going to retire forever, or if it could be, retained in some way. And an hour after that was approved by our board of directors, I was suddenly just gobsmacked with the idea that what I wanted to do was make a comedy TV show I wanted to bring back old-fashioned comedy, like with George Burns and Gracie Allen, shows like from 50, 60, 70 years ago, and bring back the flavor of that when they really had strong comedic writing and great comedic timing. And so within the month, we had actually filmed our first sizzle clip. And 6 months later, we were producing our first pilot, which was on stage in front of a live audience in a senior center. And things moved so fast. It was just beautiful. And then I met my current partner, Eric, which you will meet in the show. And then there was the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And there was absolutely nothing about the pandemic that would enable us to continue doing what we did. We couldn't perform in front of a live audience in a senior center. So we scrapped the whole thing. And I rebuilt the show from scratch under the conditions of the pandemic so that we could have our actors film at home. They would be safe. They wouldn't be exposed to any illness. And Floyd Strayer, who's our director and producer, he stepped forward and he figured out a way that we could combine their performances digitally. And we didn't have anything better to do. I mean, it was the pandemic, for God's sake. And we really saw the need, not just for us, but for everybody in the whole world was going to need to recover from the tragedy of the pandemic. And I had found, and myself and Floyd had found through his own life, that comedy can be a road towards healing. And we felt that the whole world needed to heal at that point. So we pursued, and in the height of the pandemic, we created season 1 of the Smartlies.
Amazing. And now, since I know it's gotten awards, it's gotten all of this press, how did you go from creating it to that? Like, how did you get the word out? How did you get it shared? How'd that process work?
We absolutely didn't know what to do. Floyd and I were both first-time filmmakers, and we were absolutely shocked when our show got accepted for distribution. And so last April, we launched on Plex TV, and in August, we launched on Tubi TV. And now we're on like 5 or 6 different platforms. I can't even count them. And then when we were doing interviews to announce the launch of the TV series worldwide, the interviewers told us what a great radio program we would make. That was wonderful just to listen to our show. And we said, well, that's great, but we know how to make a TV show and air it worldwide, but we don't know how to make a radio show or a podcast. And so the interviewers literally educated us and their listeners on during our interview on how to go about it. And so a few weeks later, we launched our radio and podcast version of the Smartlies as well. So that's also now all 8 episodes are available for the public, free of charge, streaming everywhere in the world.
You just never know where education's going to come from, right?
Exactly. And just take it where you find it.
That's amazing. So I feel like you've covered so many, what I love to call good news moments. But I'm so intrigued by this moment that I'd love to go back to and frame in that moment of like accomplishment. When you first took the stage for your first time as a comedian, paint that picture.
I was scared to death, and in fact, that's what I made the opening line of my comedy show. I mean, I'm an introvert. This was really hard for me. I also had severe stage fright. It was a lot to overcome. So the opening line of my comedy show was that now I'm facing my fears head on, because when I tried backing into them, they canceled my car insurance. And I really think that sums it up. For all of us have fears. And the more fears we face, the more confidence it gives us to face others.
Yes. And when we don't face them, bad things happen.
Exactly. They'll cancel your car insurance. So for God's sake, go out there and face those fears. Don't run from them anymore.
And how did it feel when you stepped off the stage, knowing what you just accomplished?
I have never had a bigger high in my entire life as stepping away from my first comedy show where people were actually laughing. And I did climb a mountain once, and that is a real endorphin experience to stand at the top of a mountain. But this really rivaled it because I was facing so big of a fear. I wasn't afraid of climbing a mountain, but I was very afraid of standing on stage and trying to make people laugh. I mean, what if they didn't? What if I just made an absolute fool out of myself? But I had to accept going into it that it was completely okay for me to make an absolute fool out of myself. It was completely okay for people to not laugh. The only thing that would not be okay would be for me to not try.
There's crux of it right there. So what are there phrases or mantras that keep coming back to you during these times of challenges?
Yes, I have a very simple one. I think I made it up myself. Maybe somebody else did. I don't know. But in dealing with fatigue and illness, especially, it can really put a hamper in your day and what you can do from one minute to the other. And so for me, I created the thing of just saying, do what you can see. And if I could see that I could wash the dishes that minute, then I would wash the dishes. If I could see that, whatever it was I could see that I could do, to do that. And don't look at the big picture. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed by how much more there is to do. And I think that really helped me along in the development of the TV show, because I wasn't focused on doing the entire TV show. I was just like, okay, what can you see? What can you do today? What can you do in the next 5 minutes that can move you closer to that goal? It doesn't have to be anything major. I think the development of the TV show is really a lot of building blocks of very tiny things.
And that, for anyone in any situation, that mantra saying is so needed, because how often is it easy just to get overwhelmed by the whole thing, whatever the thing is, right? And if we just take it step by step, suddenly we get there, and it might be long and it might be short, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you did that with the development of your podcast. You didn't.
100%.
There was no way that you could tackle everything at once. None of us can. And I think I had the benefit of illness. I also had the benefit of a feeling that I lived under very limited time constraints, because I think that gets you off your chair and into action. A lot of us think, oh, life is going to go on forever. I have another 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ahead of me. I don't have that luxury. I always have that sense of urgency of, oh my God, this could be the last day. So how can I make the best of it? How can I spread my joy throughout the world today?
I love that mindset of, it wasn't just what can I do for me, you said, how can I spread my joy throughout the world today? Beautiful. So going along with that, if someone came to you and they wanted to make a difference and they just were feeling that overwhelmed, they didn't know how to start, what would you tell them encompassing that idea of taking it step by step?
I don't know. I mean, I have this kind of natural or imposed sense of urgency that I was really blessed with, that I think a lot of people don't have. When our life is going very well, we tend to not be as appreciative or as grateful or have as much of a sense of urgency. So a lot of times people might need to maybe even create their own emergency of imagining, okay, what if I was going to die, say, a year ago from now? What if? How would I live my life differently? What would I do different today? What message would I like to leave behind? And I think a lot of my life, in the last, 30 years has been focused on what message do I want to leave in the world? And I think that I've been super blessed with that, with the position of making it more serious to me again and again and again. And today I still continue my treatments. I still have infusions twice a week. I don't let it stop me,
Wow. You're so inspiring. This is just, I want everyone to hear these stories, because how often do we, when we are considered quote unquote able-bodied or have no ailments, so to speak, that are giving us solid reason to not do fill in the blank, and we don't do it because, oh, we're tired or we're feeling this emotion or that. But you, like you said, just we need to make the most of every day, because we don't know if we have a day or a year or 100 years. So I think these are just beautiful, beautiful reminders.
I would also advise people to give their excuses away. We don't need to hold on to our own excuses. I don't have a college degree. There are a lot of people who would consider that if they wanted to create a television show, that they should go get a degree in filmmaking. Now, I'm not discouraging anybody from who has a degree in filmmaking,
Sure.
for God's sake, but I don't even have a single course in any of it.
Yeah.
And Floyd and I learned hands-on during the pandemic. We used YouTube videos to learn everything that there was about filmmaking. We didn't know how to do video editing, and we learned because we had to, because we had this TV show.
Oh my gosh. You never blamed your age. You never blamed your experience. You never blamed your education or your physical state. You just made it happen.
Or my finances, because we produced the entire season 1 of the Smartlies on the dregs of my Social Security check.
Oh my gosh.
And it is so easy to sit there and say, I want to make this multi-million-dollar, sitcom. I want people all around the world to enjoy it. But oh my God, I only have $500 a month to work with.
Right.
Okay, it's very easy to say it's impossible, but I'm here to say it's not. If you have a dream that you're willing to commit to it, and don't listen to excuses. I think excuses are probably the worst ailment that anybody could have.
Very, very strong sentence that I am obsessed with right now. I love that. Thank you for saying these things. Thank you for inspiring us. And 2 things before I let you go. First is, I read the synopsis and watched the clips of the Smartlies, but for the audience, since this might be their first introduction, they're going to go and look it up after this. Would you give the synopsis for them?
Well, sure. Eric and Shelley Smartley are king and queen of the Minnesota Renaissance Fair. We win the lottery and we win $300 million. So we buy a luxury beachfront complex on the shores of La Jolla in San Diego, where our entire family lives. And they are motivated to part us from our money by hook or by crook. So and we declare in the opening lines of the show that we're the luckiest couple in the world. And I truly believe that we are, because very, very few people are able to really reach out and affect people literally worldwide and share their love and their joy of life and their humor and their laughter. And so our show is a lot more like classic comedy than modern comedy, in that we have the funny and it keeps on coming, line after line after line. We really focus on the writing and the performance. We're over the top in acting, sort of like the old Beverly Hillbillies sort of thing. We have aliens, we have witches, we have just craziness. And we have enough insanity to keep us going for 8 seasons. So we have 8 seasons planned of the Smartlies. The 8th season will be our last, our 64th show. And that's because I feel very strongly that if you want to tell a story, you also need to know what the end of the story is going to be. Is it going to be a happy ending? Is it going to be a sad ending? What's it going to be? And as a writer, it's important to me to know where to drive my story, where the beginning is, where the middle is, and where the end is, to keep people involved and not only laughing, but going along with the emotional journey of the show as well.
Wonderful. Shelley, where can we find you and the Smartlies online?
Well, of course, you can just Google us. We're Smart, LYS. There's no apostrophe involved. Our website is thesmartlies.com, and there we list all of the TV platforms that we're on, radio and podcasts. as long with our social media. We have profiles of all of our actors and the past media appearances that we've made. So I encourage everybody to just, Google it, the Smartleys. You won't regret it.
Oh, thank you, Shelley. This was just such a delight and such a lift in my day. I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be able to meet you. And I love your podcast and the positive bent that you have on it, and encouraging people to reach for their dreams and showing them how to get there as well. I think that that's extremely important. And you're making a difference all around the world.
Well, thank you. But right back at you. I just love our conversation, and keep doing these amazing things, as I know you will.
Thank you, Kate. You too.
Thanks so much for listening to Be the Good with Kate Chericello. Whether you're listening on YouTube or via podcast, it would mean the world if you liked, subscribed, and or left a review. You heard about the good? Now go out and be the good in your life this week. If you have stories of good news that need to be shared, please send me a message. Thanks again, and have a great week.